Peter Falk, a lot of his mental stuff, they didn't have. They sent up. They called him in Los Angeles and said, "We need more stuff. We need you thinking." And Peter Falk said, "Well, you send me this stuff." He said, "Oh no, just go into a studio and just talk."
Oh, love it.
He went in for like several hours, like 2 or 3 hours, just rambled, and they snipped it up and put it in.
He seems like the right guy to say just riff some stuff going through your head, because what's Columbo doing but just muttering about his ex-wife?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Grande Bouffe.
The Big Feast.
With myself, Cole Smithey, and my co-host, Mike Lacy. As always, we are here to copiously consume international politics and culture through the prism of a single film and a different craft beer each week. And in this episode, we are honored to have the dramatist Philip Holt.
Thank you.
Welcome.
How's it going?
Going very well.
Excellent. Very good to have you on the program. Tell us about your movie. I want to hear a little about your choice for Wings of Desire.
Wings of Desire is to me, one of the all-time great plotless films. It's missing all the things that the books would tell you a movie needs to have to be a good movie, and it's a classic.
So it's an anti-narrative.
It's very much, well, I don't know if I could say that, because it has just a really wonderful meditative narrative flow from beginning to end, with events, with objectives, with motivation, but none of the usual plot contrivances that writers use to keep the story interesting. The interest of the story is in the basic dramatic problem and how it's going to unfold for this non-human creature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not to get too into the guts, but it seems like it's not just doing that out of a stylistic choice, but because the values and the desires of ordinary humans sort of structure the plot progression in a movie, and our main characters don't have those same ambitions.
Right, they're observers. They hover. Well, in fact, in German, the title of the film was "Heaven over Berlin." This notion that they exist over top of everything, somewhat removed.
Yeah, if I remember my Aquinas, which I really do not at all, but there is a tradition of thinking about beings a lot like this. You know, there was a talk for a long time about sort of incorporeal beings that had rules in existence, not quite as in the movie like Constantine or something. I don't know if we have time, but I'd love to talk about this crappier Hollywood versions of this, adaptations directly of this film.
City of Angels?
City of Angels.
I was in that movie.
What? Nick Cage, you've really fallen.
I was one of the angels. You can see me. There's a scene when they're in the library, and they did. No, I'm serious. And they filmed it in the then brand spit-shine new public library downtown, and you can see me lean over. I'm wearing everybody's got the long trench coats, and man, did they screw up. I mean, why would they even try? This is a movie that you cannot remake, period.
Such a funny, hubristic idea to be like, Meg Ryan, Nick Cage, Wings of Desire in L.A., City of... It's
it works.
No, that movie doesn't work. Have you seen that movie?
It doesn't work at all. The title is the thing that they thought.
Oh yeah,
L.A. Of course. It works.
And then they've got the black guy. Well, the thing is, what gets me about this movie is that it's so much about Germany at this time, East and West Berlin, and that's what really, for me, he's not trying to paint a pretty picture of a post-war Germany, and it's very striking.
And the nature of the walls, I thought it's a great metaphor, kind of floating through the whole thing. The idea of these divided people, and we've got this sort of vertical division too here between the us down here and the angels above. So
let's check out our beer and then get into a little bit of who the characters are in this. Let's check in the movie in a second. What are we drinking here, Cole?
Well, I just was able to walk yesterday. I went to my surgeon, and he said I can walk. So I made it down to what we call the ghetto store, and they have this wonderful. It's up at 100. What is it? 96th and Lex.
We call it that?
Yeah, we call it the ghetto store.
We do?
Yeah, because
do?
Yeah, that's how it is. Anything north of 95th Street has always been considered the ghetto. You know, the whole blaxploitation thing across 110th Street. It could have been across 95th Street. But I chose this wonderful beer from OMMEGANG because it is called FRUITION. And I thought instantly about our main character, who is an angel who wants to come to human fruition. If you will.
I like it.
And so
one of the more bigger stretches we've had, but I like it.
It's dry hopped wit beer brewed with passion fruit, mango, and kiwi. So we're all gonna cheers with our respective beers.
Gentlemen.
Cheers.
Ah. Wow, it's quite tart.
It's yummy.
Yeah.
It's tart, but it really lays on. It has a good mouthfeel, as they say. It lays very softly on the tongue.
I'd like to know what a wit beer is. Do you know?
In this case, it's good.
Perfect for breakfast.
That's a great idea.
It's a breakfast beer.
Yeah. Instead of a mimosa, you have this.
Yes.
There you go.
Skip your grapefruit.
There you go. We solved that. OMMEGANG Brewery in Cooperstown, New York, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. Baseball. And I'm going to be there soon. I'm really looking forward to July 21st.
You're going to Elvis Costello, you're saying?
Looks like I'll be seeing Mr. Elvis Costello at the OMMEGANG Brewery.
Haven't you seen Elvis like tons and tons of times, right?
Many times,
Yeah.
but not in a long time. I got burned out on Elvis because I listened to him every day of my life for 20 years, and then it's like, okay, enough. I can never listen to any of this again. Also, because he did this record with Burt Bacharach. Do you guys know about this record called "Painted from Memory"?
Mm-mm.
It's all Torch songs, and it's so stunningly beautiful, but also just so incredibly painful to listen to, because they're all songs of romantic loss, and man, it just, it hits you, I tell you. I saw them perform that live at Radio City Music Hall. It was amazing.
It sounds like you OD'd on it and stopped listening to
It was just, you know, I don't know. I shouldn't even say that. It's not entirely true, because we went to my wife and I went to see him at 92nd Street Y, I don't know, maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And we chatted with him outside, and I got his autograph and stuff. He's a very nice guy, and
he's sort of
probably my favorite songwriter.
This will be a club performance.
I don't know. I can't speak to what the venue is going to be because I haven't seen it. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people there for sure.
You know, I always thought of songwriters as sort of like incorporeal observers of society, sort of just taking stock of the stories of humanity, which weirdly reminds me of this movie. So yeah, do we want to jump into like?
Yeah, I like your segue. Let's roll with that.
I
keep them coming.
Yeah. Oh, of course. It's not just a bit. Like, I think that we're seeing a movie that's not just based in this kind of fantastical world where there are angels who are hanging out with us. They're very accessible, and I think a lot of that is because, like, we see artists, we see performers have similar distance between themselves and others, and it's kind of maybe like a meditation on that, on being an observant person.
I think one of the things that Wenders does with the angels that's kind of remarkable in the story is he makes them emotional creatures. It's just that one attribute that's really important for these angels, because often they're portrayed as distant, removed, uninterested.
Kind of like the Greek gods, kind of, but also neutered. Like angels as portrayed as a real weird thing.
Well, because they're unable to effect change. And so there's a great sequence where a man is contemplating suicide, and the angel goes to him to try and prevent him from committing suicide. And of course, he ends up committing suicide anyway. And it's very painful for the angel, because the angel can't do anything, but he feels that remorse and that loss and that sense of guilt because he wasn't able to help him.
Do you want to talk about who our main character angels are?
We've got Bruno, Ganz, and Otto Sander are our two angels. Damiel and Cassiel, I think their names are.
Mm-hmm.
There are other kind of peripheral angelic characters that hang out, but they don't appear to be given names, and they don't interact much other than to give knowing looks
Right.
as they walk by. And of course, Peter Falk is in there visiting this film as a former angel who had made a similar decision to the one that Bruno Ganz Damiel makes, to plunge from the heights and become human.
Is Peter Falk playing himself? Because at one point he talks about Columbo.
Yes, he is.
He's absolutely playing himself, and
Great.
And I love the layer that adds to the movie when the Russian kids walk by him and they go, it's a muddy, bombed out area, and they say, "Is that Columbo?" No, I couldn't be him. He wouldn't be hanging out around here. not in that torn overcoat.
There's a scene with the girl where she meets Peter Falk at a coffee stand, and she's been criticized for seeming too starstruck by the whole thing. And I think the critic who wrote this actually missed the whole point of the scene, because that's exactly what somebody would do. Everybody that met him was starstruck in the film. And so it was, I think, a completely natural scene in the way she played it. I mean, that was exactly the right
Yeah, you're
choice.
talking about Roger. I read that. Right?
Yeah.
That's Roger Ebert. Yeah, Roger. I have to say, the more I read Roger Ebert, I don't know. I've always read Roger Ebert reviews, but
They don't hold up great.
they don't hold up. And specifically, like what you just pointed out about this scene, where he completely misses because he wants to take out this thing and blow up the scene to more than what it is, rather than taking it in the context of the story. And it's a love story, because the angel falls in love with the trapeze artist, who, by the way, is played by the director's wife. Right? That was Wenders'
Or his girlfriend at the time. I believe they were married later, but
okay.
Yeah.
So the story is inspired by Rainer Maria Rilke, and he co-wrote the movie with I'm pretty sure he co-wrote the film. I'm checking right now, with a poet.
like Peter Handke was.
That's right. That's right. So that's what I want. I want to make sure that we give Peter Handke his due credit for what's going on with this story, because it's very clear that a lot of thought went into putting this story together.
Interestingly, Handke did no plot work with this at all.
Okay.
He gave Wenders,
So he did all of it.
he gave him a series of monologues and snippets, and said, "Here you go. These are things for people to say."
Mm-hmm.
But the idea of where they would say them or to what end really was all on Wenders to figure out, how am I going to have these words spoken in a way that follows some kind of line? Because Handke really wasn't worried about a plot. He just said, these are things that would be under discussion. And he'd give him a couple of pages of monologue or dialogue, but not really attached. So Wenders started, when they started filming, they really had no script to speak of other than these pages.
Yeah, a key thing that you might not expect going into it is that these angels are able to basically read everyone's minds. And what they're hearing is a mix of just mundane stuff,
despair,
a lot of
loneliness.
despair, a lot of real German morose, like thinking about life.
A lot of isolation.
A lot of isolation.
Yeah.
Which is very Wenders, this idea of people alone.
And we should mention that this film, Wenders is card-carrying member of New German Cinema, of which Fassbender, of course, is a famous representative, and Herzog, who's still going stronger than ever because that guy like an ox.
Yeah.
I tell you, I've interviewed Wenders, and Herzog, and I've interviewed Verhoeven, and both of those guys are they're just like oxes. They're amazing, but their reflexes are so quick. You can see it in the way they think and just how they move and stuff. Those guys are just, out of control. A lot of energy. You have to have a lot of energy to be a director.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is definitely a slower paced, like incredibly meditative thing. It makes me think of Terrence Malick, but it also has.
Well, it makes me think a lot of Jean-Luc Godard. I was really tripping on the Alphaville aspects of how he milks locations, with to great effect when angels are sitting on the statue. That is such an iconic shot, and he does it on. Of course, we have to talk about what he does with color, because most of the film, probably 90% of the film, is in black and white, but there is a 10% of it that he uses in color in very pronounced and effective ways.
So maybe tracking along, because I think it has something to do with what the angels are going through is when color comes in. So maybe we can like track through a bit of what the respective angels are doing and think about where that color pops in. Is it? It's not Gabriel, but it's how is his? How do you say his name?
Daniel.
Daniel. Sorry, Daniel.
Bruno.
He's the one who falls in love with the trapeze artist, right? So he winds up at a circus, and this is where what structure there is. It's them sort of going through these sort of arcs of feelings, and I think the first time there's color is he's at the circus, and the trapeze artist suddenly there's a shot from underneath her, and like the frame erupts. What's your take on why there's color sometimes?
Well, the world of the angels is monochromatic in the film. They feel and they observe. Their reality is missing this experience that we have. And there are several moments during the film before he falls, before he becomes human, where the camera switches to color, where you see the color world as humans experience it before it switches back to the monochromatic world of the angels. And one of the things that Wenders does that I think is another bit of genius in all this is that when he finally does switch to color, he makes Berlin look beautiful. There's a kind of a richness and a saturation to the film where, because we're looking at this really kind of sterile view shot through a piece of nylon, and suddenly you get these rich, saturated, vivid colors all around. It's very sensual. You can see what you almost relate to the angel's experience of, holy shit, look at all this stuff. And when he's cut his head and he licks the blood off his hand, he goes, oh, it has a taste.
Yeah, everything's in color.
Yeah.
But when you look at like the scenes inside the library, the way he focuses on the ceiling and moves the camera, it's so much like, it's such a Godard shot. It feels like you're watching a Godard movie.
Yeah,
like this,
What's it say to you, Cole, that angels see things in black and white?
Well, I think it's a great tool that he uses to create this netherworld. It helps you with the suspension of disbelief, and the way that the angels wear the dark layers of dark clothing, where you got the gray and the black, and so it really creates an image system it's a unique image system that he creates. And this is something I was thinking about earlier today, is that you can tell that a lot of modern filmmakers don't think about image system at all. It's a lost facet of the art form, and it's sad because it's a very important thing. You can do so much with it, and I think Wenders really milks it. And we should talk about the Nick Cave aspect to this thing too, because he brings in this music, the music of Nick Cave, and Nick Cave, I would say he's on a par with Robin Hitchcock for a couple of reasons, not the least of which that they've both been around forever. But his music is very unique, and it really adds this intense gothic layer to the movie, and so you get this great contrast of modern and gothic with the black and white. It's cool.
And his music too is a really strong counterpoint to the soundtrack of The Angels, which is the cello and a little bit of harp and the choral music. And,
Yeah, there's a classical element to it. They're timeless in that way.
and then you come down to The World with the People, and they're in this club with this kind of cacophonous, emotional, physical, visceral music playing, which is so different from the kind of, like I said, classical or more ethereal music that surrounds the Angels as we watch them.
It's kind of equally meta to see Peter Falk in this art house German movie as it is to see aliens interacting with human beings. Like, it's another version of alienness in a way.
Well, there's a unity between he and Bruno Ganz. There's something about they're probably about the same age and their physical bearing. I find them to be, opposites of the same substance. I like that. I like that harmony in the movie
and they both
between those two actors.
They both make the same choice, right? To sort of become human. You know what I love? This movie is not obsessed with like the rules of this crap.
Right. One of the things that's also beautiful is when Bruno finally meets Peter Falk through the fence.
They finally shake hands through
They
the
shake
fence.
hands, but there's no contrivance. There's no extra complexity. It's just like, dude, that it's very straightforward and emotionally very straightforward. And, they don't take it too far. They don't go in too deep. They part, in a very friendly way. And it's such a great, like Angels, these are like part of the same fraternity. And they do the handshake and they share a little bit and then they head their separate directions. And it's done in such an unaffected way that I think it's really kind of touching.
I haven't seen City of Angels, but I imagine there's a lot of stuff of like, you're in love with this woman, you know the rules. There's three rules that Angels...
You're absolutely right. You are spot on. Of course, that's what Hollywood does. They explain the thing, and it's Nicolas Cage is the angel, and the woman...
This is day number one stuff. You do not fall in love with a mortal.
I don't know if it's Meg Ryan or who it is, but she's...
It is Meg Ryan, yeah. Who I believe...
She's a heart surgeon.
Is she a heart surgeon or a brain... Oh, it's got to be a heart surgeon.
She's a heart surgeon.
It's got to be a heart surgeon.
And then of course his Cage's co-angel is played by the black actor who's done all of the police shows on cable. I can't remember his name. I'll look up his name real quick while you guys chat.
Oh yeah, I wonder who that is.
And I'm wondering, I can't recall now from City of Angels, because it is a Hollywood film, so I know that 10 minutes in, there is an inciting incident of some kind that's going to set this plot in motion.
Right.
The one, of course, is totally absent in Wenders'
Andre
film.
Braugher. Andre Braugher, of course, is the co-angel.
Co-angel, okay.
It's the whole
But
thing.
it feels like more like his like sidekick best friend who's like
full
of exposition.
Yeah, that's the guy he explains everything to, or or who helps with all the.
Yeah, he's the Dave
exposition.
Chappelle in You've Got Mail.
Dave Chappelle would have been such a better co-angel.
Yeah, I've always said that. just in general, and now it has context.
There's no way it could have worked. There's no way that movie could ever have worked, no matter what confluence of stuff you throw at it.
It's funny for Wenders to say that there is no German, like, what did he say? No German, not ethos, but consciousness. Because how could you more, like, illustratively show the difference between the Americanization of this idea than the fact that this is adapted into a Nick Cage vehicle?
Well, it's certainly it's a great example of how Hollywood ruined
Exactly.
a beautiful concept. I mean, the concept of the film is beautiful and it's executed in a masterful way. And what better way to celebrate that than to take it and foul it all up?
There is one glaring flaw to the movie, though, and it comes at the end when he says "to be continued," and then we get the next movie that we can't even discuss. So
there's a sequel?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wenders really should have known to leave well enough alone.
What's the
if he had just
sequel
left
of
off
that?
this "to be continued" off of this movie?
What's up with the sequel, you guys?
Well, one of the things that he kind of regretted about this story is that Cassio, the other angel, Otto Sander, that his story just sort of heads off into the clouds. And he always thought, well, he should follow. I mean, there should be, he's struggling too. What's his deal? And so
everybody wants to know what happens to Cassio. Everyone comes up to me. They ask me what happens to Cassio.
And something
my
does.
general foreign accent.
He follows, and the sequel is all about him following.
Yeah, it's.
Does he become like a music producer? Like I would go a totally different route.
Well, and we should say that Wim Wenders has had a long and storied career, but not one with. It's very possible that there have been more misses than hits in Wenders' career.
Yeah, I'm pausing to think about that because when he misses hard. I mean, it's a real miss.
Mm-hmm.
The $1 million Hotel?
Oh, I have a story about that movie.
Yeah.
What is it? It was in this.
With Mel Gibson with the neck brace.
I saw that movie in a screening room. Review 1. Oh no, it was review 2. It's I can't remember the address, but it's on 7th Avenue, and it's right next door to where the studios were that Biggie got shot.
Oh yeah.
And so we're watching this thing, the $1 Million Hotel, just one of the worst movies ever made. And inexplicably, during the screening, somebody, and the screening room I'm sitting in probably holds 40 people. But over to my left, there's only about 5 rows in the thing. Over to my left, I see somebody get up and run from the left side of the room to the right, straight into the wall.
It'll do that.
And he fell down on the floor. He had such a violent reaction to the movie that something inspired him to get up and run full speed into the wall.
Do you think there was like one of the film producers in the back of the theater is like, wow, did you see that? Double the screens. They're gonna make $1 million.
There were probably only 7 people in the screening room to begin with. It was the weirdest thing I've ever experienced at any film screening.
Just think if everybody does this.
Yeah.
And then you can have movies like that, which really are to me a big miss, and then years later come up with Pina, which
I don't know Pina.
Pina is the 3D dance movie. It's amazing. It is a visual feast.
Yes, and Wenders, he's an extremely visual director. He's a photographer by nature, I think, and really wants to merge sight and feeling in every frame of his films. And when it works, it really is kind of it's very emotional. You really feel what's going on the screen. When it doesn't work, it's tragic.
Well, and of course, Buena Vista Social Club is another terrific, essential documentary.
Yeah. Sometimes there's directors who you wish you could just force to just be cinematographers or directors who are like, how about you just don't write your own movies, Christopher Nolan? How about you just someone like delete your final draft license and the world will be a better place.
I can think of a particular example where that is absolutely true, but it's not his day, so I'm going to skip it.
Well, since the Cannes Film Festival is going on right now, I will say that in 2008, I saw Wenders' Palermo shooting with the singer Campino from Die Totenhausen. I'm
going to go with Hausen.
I think it's Hosen. Die Totenhausen.
Is it like the pants?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it Die Totenhausen means all the pants?
Something about the pants.
Okay.
Something about anybody, but anyway, it's a thriller, and the guy, the singer, the lead singer, Campino he's good. He's a good actor. I liked him in it, but the movie is just dead in the water. It's just awful. I hated it. This has been a really bad year for Cannes, I have to say. I do not regret missing Cannes this year. And what's up with did you know there's no Italian movies in competition?
There's no Italian films.
No Italian films in competition. It's bizarre. There are always Italian movies in the competition.
That's nuts. In the
Paolo
competition,
Sorrentino's on the jury,
In the competition proper, maybe in the director's fortnight or something, but
I don't think so. I don't think so. There's a strange absence of
Okay, there's
of
like a
Italian
story
filmmakers.
behind this.
Yeah. There has to be.
It's Netflix fault.
That's what
that's for
Almodovar
sure.
certainly believes. I have to say, I've interviewed Almodovar and I've seen him on the street. He wouldn't give me the time of day when I said hi to him on the street. So, I don't care.
So now everybody knows.
Yeah.
Almodovar doesn't wear a watch.
Or underwear, or bow ties, or underwear or bow ties. But he does, however, think that Netflix should not be allowed to have films in competition because they are not screened on the big screen. He believes only in the big screen.
Factually inaccurate. That's not true. Anything that they do, they put in a theater for 1 week.
Right, but it has to play in a French cinema for a week, I believe. That's the story.
All right, well, just make that the requirement and they'll do it.
Well,
okay.
So I read somewhere.
I was thinking of the Oscars.
I think it was
but yeah.
Variety or Hollywood Reporter that said Cannes needs Netflix more than Netflix needs Cannes. And I think that pretty much sums it up right there.
Yeah. How many daily active users does Can have? I think that someone has the leverage here.
Yeah, I mean, you have to love the French for their provincial thinking and their love of Jerry Lewis, but Almodovar is not French.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The thing about it's like they can just keep Jerry Lewis. They can take all our VHS copies.
They can take Woody Allen too.
Yeah. You guys like him so much. Go ahead. Yeah. Hold on to him. Well, I don't want to say any last thoughts because one thing about this movie is what we didn't talk about is like the way that it like references the concept of eternal things. They do this cute thing where they're sitting in a car and they're reading about things that happened that day in the past.
They write it all down.
They write it all down. They're the observers of the world, of the unseen things, and it's all kind of things that you might come home and like tell your girlfriend about, but you would never would never make the news. And so he's talking about like, yeah, this day 600 years ago, someone fell off of a horse and met his wife. Just observations like that.
Well, and then there's the disinformation. I love the conversation that Falk has with the German boy, where he's the kid's off on some tangent about how there were two Hitlers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Oh yeah. It's a very contemporary sounding conspiracy theory.
It really is, and Falk sets him straight in his very American way, and the kid thanks him, and it's contrived, but it's funny, and it speaks to disinformation. It speaks about fictional news or lies, and then
and just like the sort of how inherently human it is. Like what people kind of quibble about is very
universal.
There's a difference between the mundaneness that people get hung up with in this and this sort of like deep poetic normalcy that the angels are looking at. Like, again, they're not talking about politics. They're talking about little real life things, but they're so inspiring and poetic in their particularness. Where people, they're people, yeah, you get obsessed about just like petty crap.
Why is there no more toothpaste? We need more toothpaste. Why didn't somebody didn't buy the toothpaste?
But there's, he does a great job of capturing some of the expository monotony of an angel's life. Mm-hmm. Remember way back when there were no people? I remember that. Remember when the animals were running across the savannah and there were no people? Now there are people. Remember all the things that have happened with the people? We take our notes, but it's like, remember, it's an interesting job, isn't it? Yeah, it's kind of interesting. And it seems so matter-of-fact to the angels. It's like it's their version of boring.
You see a lot of movies deal with like the concept that someone isn't going to die, so their life sucks because of that. You need death for there to be purpose. You see that in a lot of movies.
Yeah.
Something is much more naturally expressed in this film. You get in that mind space a lot more organically.
Yeah, the angels, that's not part of their concept. They're not. What's interesting too is they're not bored. Mm-hmm. We've been doing this for eternity. Isn't that cool?
But there is a detachment from it.
Yeah.
There's everything
do
is.
you think really because he's so involved that he wants to leave angelhood and go be a human. He gets himself all wrapped up in it. It took him eternity to get here. I understand, but
Right.
now he wants to. I want to join that club. It just seems like a real hoot.
What creates that distance and what's relatable about it is seeing someone jump off a building and you feel that they did it, but at the end of the day, you knew they were going to die anyway, and you're going to see it. It's just, there's events are going. So it is a very poetic detachment where if you become sort of enlightened to the way that humanity acts, you can sit back and be like, we're doing this again. We're going to this, war's happening again. And you're both detached and invested.
And because he's putting it in German terms, because he's focusing on East and West Berlin. I like the scene with the wall when he's asking about the colors because he's never seen colors before, what the different colors are that people have painted on the wall. So he's celebrating the art that people, where people have taken the lemons and made lemonade. So
there's an old man who one of the angels is a bit obsessed with.
Oh, Homer.
Yeah, he's called Homer, and he's a new Homer, and he's writing an epic about peace. And of all of the characters, I think he was the most like an angel of a human being. And I was saying a bit of this earlier. There's something about how Wenders put things like that makes these angels very relatable, and it's almost like not just they're a metaphor, but they are a personification of the mood when you are detached and observing and trying to have higher ambitions for humanity than humanity seems to have. And that's a really amazing thing to pull off.
And they seem to intrude themselves into people's realities. They can't make us do things, but remember there's a guy on the subway who's, he's all wrapped up in like everything that's wrong with his life. And the angel kind of puts his head next to him and he says, "Oh, I'm still here. Maybe I should give this another try." He kind of changes psychological direction as a consequence of that encounter, which is really interesting that they have this ability to help us move, not move us, but help us move. And maybe similar with Homer, he's with Homer. He's almost like a guardian angel with Homer in many ways, sticking with him through those muddy, ruined flats near the wall where the what he remembered is gone. The buildings that were there are gone, but the angels.
Yeah, it's Potsdamer Platz. Yeah. Potsdamer Platz. That's where he's walking in the mud.
Yeah, he's remembering the old times when he owned one of the two cars that used to be there.
Yeah,
and this is an important cross-cultural connection that he's making because the Peter Falk character is obviously American. He's shooting a film in Germany, but his Jewish grandmother has all of these remembrances that she has shared with them. So he's tracing those things while he's killing time and also making friends with the angel who he calls compañero.
Although it is curious how an angel or former angel could have a grandmother.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But one of the things I do like it about the movie, they never bother trying to explain that or fix it. It's just an ambiguity, and it's like if you have a problem with it, it's like tough.
Well, it's a great example of magical realism, that's for sure. And to that, because there's so much that is condensed into it. He really understands how to do the most with the least, and that was making me think of Nick Cave again, because Wenders is very inspired. You can tell he's really in love with facets of American life, and especially American music and the blues, the simple form. So the way he keeps the story, this episodic story going while maintaining this mood, sustaining this great mood, is what allows you to just escape into the movie.
There's a great line from another of his films called Kings of the Road, where one of the characters says to the other, "Yanks have colonized our consciousness." And you see that, and that's another Wender thing, the idea that there is no German consciousness anymore. There's this, I don't know, we're bled into other cultures and, in this case, other realities. And
Well, you're in for another reality. I'm sorry that you're leaving for London tomorrow because it's going to be insane at the airports.
oh yeah, it'll probably be there, yes, and it'll be easier to get out than get in, I think. So arriving and leaving the airport will be a little more straightforward.
So you're there for the summer?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your projects in London, because we spoke a little bit about your stuff before we started recording, but I want to know about what you're doing in London with your wife.
Well, the first thing, of course, I have a play at the Lost Theatre One Act Festival, and the Lost Theatre is changing its name this spring to the Stockwell Playhouse, although the Lost Theatre Company is going to persist there. This festival has been going on for 30 some odd years, and I have a play there this year. And so this is sort of a shout out to them because it's a great venue, it's a great theater, really supportive of new writing, and I've been there a few times now in the festivals they put on, and it's a great bunch of people. So I love going there. I love doing this. It's going to be a lot of fun. So and then my wife, of course, is going to be at RADA, the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, all summer doing a Shakespeare thing.
That's amazing. I'm jealous of your wife.
Yeah, well, I'll be running lines with her all summer too. So.
That's fun.
And then I have another full-length play that we are trying to stand up by the fall, but my intuition is that the spring is going to end up being a more realistic time frame based on availability of the venue and other factors. So I'm not freaking out about that. It gives me another 2 months to fart around with it, which is maybe not the best thing to do with something that should be done, but if I've got a window, I can do some more work.
Okay, so you're putting up a one-act play.
The end of the year is a full-length play. It'll be it's a 4-week run of a full-length play.
What's the title?
That one's called The Peregrine.
Okay.
And it's
There's a book that Werner Herzog
yes
has all of his students read.
Yes, it's a fabulous book. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend.
And what's it called?
The Peregrine.
And that's the name of the book too.
It's the name of the book. That is, the author follows these falcons or these birds of prey through several seasons, and this play is only analogously similar to that. The protagonist, that is his nature. His nature is as a predator. That's what he is, and of course, as in the case of most tragedies, it doesn't end especially well for him, but he's led quite a life getting there.
So let me put you on the spot real quick and try to tie as much a bow as I can on this this wonderful film you had us watch. Do you think that now when things are fairly crazy in our world, it's not exactly the same as the end of the Cold War in Berlin, but do you think that there's a room for art, for literature to really maybe nudge people like these angels and be like the angels of our better nature? What role do you see, and like what kind of purpose do you feel like art has specifically now? Speaking of like the written word and theater.
Where else would you meet angels? It's in the stories we tell. That tell each other. That's where we find a lot of what's sort of best and holiest about people is in art, in any art, whether it be visual art or the spoken word or music. That's really what makes us kind of special. And so I think in a world right now where with things going on the way they're going on, to push even harder in that direction, write more, perform more, play more music. That's to me in many ways the best defense. Use art. Crush evil with art.
I like it.
Yeah, that's good job. That was an amazing answer. I'm like tearing up a little bit.
No, you kind of knocked that one out of the ballpark.
Well, I've got some angel trivia too, if you want.
Yeah, let's go.
Please. How many is it on the head of a pin?
All of them. And that's the answer.
Was that the question?
How many angels could dance on the head of a pin? All of them, because they're incorporeal. They're not extended in space. They could all dance on the head of a pin at the same time.
Is that Aquinas' answer?
That is the answer. So now that's probably worth at least one beer and a bar argument.
I think
I love
so.
it.
I like it. That's great. All right. Well, we've got to run. Phil's got things to do, places to be, people to see. But thank you so much for coming on the Grande Bouffe and for
Thank you.
and for introducing this film to our listeners and to us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for listening. Please remember to turn your cell phones off when you're walking, riding a bicycle, driving, or watching